Welcome, everyone, to another day in the Telesummit. It's about how you live, taking the fear out of talking about advanced care planning, serious illness, end-of-life care. And today we have an amazing woman with us. And you know what? Before I started the recording, I was going to make sure I knew how to pronounce your last name, so I hope I don't butcher this. But
I was actually, right before you started, I was like, should I tell her? No, let's see if she can get it right.
Okay, well, we're going to try. It's probably so bad, but this is Kerry Geocaris.
That is perfect. You did it. Yes. I can't even tell you the ones that my favorite one was, so my dad, who kind of was catalyst for this whole launch of this business, was a surgeon, and there's some nurses and a patient that used to call him Dr. Geo Kisses.
Oh, that's very sweet.
When he passed away, I'll never forget, at the wake and the funeral, this group of women came up to me and they told me this, and they said, "We loved his butt in the scrubs." It was so perfect.
Oh my God, don't you love that?
It was so great. We've gotten Dr. Geocaris, and then I've had like Geocaris or Geogorgeous. Oh, another one was Geogorgeous. Another nurse called.
Yeah, he must have been a hottie.
Yep.
I like it. Your mama was a lucky girl.
She was.
So is it Greek? Is it Italian?
Greek. Yeah, he was Greek.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
Yeah.
My best friend growing up was Greek.
Everybody,
you are in for such a treat. I can't even wait for you for us to get into this interview. But before we do that, I am going to read Kerry's bio so you get to know her a little bit better, and then just get ready for an amazingly inspirational story. So, Kerry is a life and business coach, motivational speaker, TV personality, blogger, and founder of Simply Kerry. And by the way, her website is simplykerry.com. Simply Kerry, her business is a coaching company based on the signature transformational process created by Kerry through her own journey through grief and depression. Kerry believes her father's death saved her life, and it was a catalyst for personal transformation and awakening. She is a master motivator who teaches people self-healing and functional elevation through transparency and authenticity. She and her husband are guiding people down a path of purpose and positivity through their signature courses, power coaching sessions, TV segments, and motivational events. So again, welcome.
It makes it sound, I'm reading it, I'm listening, I'm like, God, she sounds pretty cool.
You are very cool. You are very, very cool. So I guess I want to make sure that we kind of start with your dad's story. So, as I said in the bio, that your dad's death saved your life and was a catalyst for the transformation and launching of your business. So, obviously, let's start there. Tell us all about that.
Okay. So, if you knew me pre-Simply Kerry, you probably wouldn't have known the difference. Us talking, I would have been just like this. So I was definitely your classic fake it till you make it. And I think we see this with a lot of people. And I think even in our society now, we have so many people, and our young youth, and the suicidal, the depression, the rate is so high. When I was younger as a teen in college, those words weren't really thrown around. But now looking back, I was like, oh God, it really started probably in, late middle school, high school, that period where you're trying to figure out who you are and you're changing your roles and your identity. I went into probably a deep depression in college. I was a star athlete. I was very good in academics, athletics, top of the class, all those sorts of things. And I wanted to be play Division I soccer.
Oh, wow.
That was kind of the goal, and my dream was to be a soccer player. I was the only girl that played on the boys soccer team growing up, and in my town in Green Bay, Wisconsin, I was kind of known as Kerry Geocaris soccer player. So when I went to school, I was recruited to play at a D1 school, and the first day I blew out my knee. And a year or two prior to that, I actually had a compound fracture. So my body had been through a lot. And so when soccer was no longer part of my life, it was kind of one of those things where it's like, who am I? And I really lost my identity and, went through that depression. And I always excelled, though. I did really well in school, but out behind closed doors was definitely suffering. So
can I just ask, was depression a part of your life before you had the injury, or had that really not been?
Not really. I mean, I don't think I really noticed it or would have thought that it was. I think, looking at symptoms of it now, it was definitely struggles that I had of, with friends or I would definitely get really hard on myself if I didn't make something or get a good grade. I was a very creative, emotional, sensitive person. I had a lot of friends, was, popular at group, all of that. But I know, like, internally, and you can even look back at some of my poetry and things from high school, and you could just see, like, pain in there. But I didn't really recognize it until college and then after.
Right.
So this started a whole journey through college and thereafter of, medications, therapists, all sorts of things. And so it's probably like a good 18 to 20 year journey of that. And I actually met my husband in my senior year in college. And is the audio okay? Can you hear that cracking?
No, it's good on my end.
Okay. I can hear it, but it may be just feedback from me talking. So I just want to make sure. So I met my husband the last year in college, and it was one of those, like, you walk in and you meet him, and you're like, that's the one. And, you just know. And
That's so great.
It was really, really neat. And we just connected right away. And that was interesting for me because I was never one to, like, pursue anybody else. And I don't know, I just was, like, honed in on him.
It was meant to be.
It was, but it was like, now looking back at it, I definitely believe, like, God brought us together for a reason. 2 weeks after I met him in college, I went into an inpatient psychiatric unit for depression. And I mean, he had just met me and he stayed with me the whole time. So he actually was going into the field too. So he is a therapist.
Okay.
And now he coaches with me. So fast forward now, I just think about, like, how he came into my life and was definitely there to also hold space and support me and save me until here we are. And so my father, he retired as one of the top general and vascular surgeons in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He was really known in our area for being very innovative. He brought robotic surgery to Green Bay, Wisconsin. He was just one of those that just lived passionately, purposefully. And I didn't really understand what all this meant until he was diagnosed with cancer. He retired December of 2011, and then 3 months later, he was in bed and he woke up in the middle of the night. He woke up my mom and he said, "Patty, you got to take me in. I'm having a gallbladder attack." He treated this.
Diagnosing doctor, right?
Yeah. So they took him in. They had surgery, and then they found stage 4 pancreatic cancer 3 months after he retired.
Oh, that is so sad. Oh, I'm sorry.
And it was, and I'll never forget it when we all went to the hospital and they got the diagnosis, and I walk in, and I had seen, my sister is a surgeon, was his partner. My brother is their nurse. My mom managed the office. The other brother managed the office. So it was a whole family business. And I was like the black sheep in the family, like the creative, artsy one. They're the medical people. So everybody knew, like, understood the diagnosis except for me. And I walked in and I could just see, like, everyone's faces. And I didn't really understand. I'm like, it's cancer. It's okay. We can treat that. And I looked at my dad and I saw everybody's faces, and I just fell on the ground bawling. And my dad looked at me and he's like, "Kerry," he's like, "it's okay." He's like, "I've lived a great life. I have no regrets."
Wow.
It's okay. And I remember walking out of there and I said, I want to be able to say that to my kids someday. Because it, like, that statement alone just changed everything. And so that was in March. They gave him a few months to live, and he lived a whole year.
Oh, great.
And in that time, I had my own marketing business and my own company, so I got to spend a lot of time with him. So this whole idea of like self-help and living purposefully and authentically and all that stuff, none of it, I've done all this therapy and read all these self-help books and done all this research and it never clicked until I watched him live his life in that last year. And I was like, this is what this looks like. And I remember in December 6th, he calls me up and he's like, hey, they have new snow up north. Do you want to go skiing? And I was like, and here I am about to take a handful of my, my happy pills, as I call them, for the day. And I'm on the phone, and I'm like, yeah, I'll go skiing with you. And he said, well, I'm going to go get chemo, and then I'll come pick you up, and we'll go skiing. So I hung up the phone, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, here we are, like, both taking medication. Like, he's fighting to live, and I'm taking this to, exist and survive. And I'm like, I'm done. So that was like, I call it my D-Day. In my 10-step transformation book, I call it my D-Day. It was like the day that I decided to do life differently. And I just said, I told my dad, I sat down with him, like, Dad, you're showing me how to live. I want to do this. And then from that moment on, I became a student of all things wellness, and I started exploring spirituality, studied nutrition, anatomy. I got all these certifications. And then after he passed away,
so did you wait, how was the ski trip?
Oh my God, it was amazing. But it was crazy because here I am skiing with him, and he's a chemo pack on with him. We're just bombing ski hills, and he's got chemo, and he's living life, and it was amazing.
What an amazing man.
Yeah, it was in that time, and I can't remember all the numbers right now, but I remember he was a scuba diver. In that 1 year time, I think he logged over 50 scuba dives. I think 2 or 3 ski trips, like 6 sailing trips. I mean, he just lives. He never was.
He had a bucket list.
He did, and when you're given that time, and I think it's hard for me in doing what I do now. I get a lot of clients that have gone through loss, and when we do our courses, I always find the ones that have either have gone through loss or they've gone through some sort of, diagnosis or cancer or something. They're the ones, it seems to just click a little bit because you have that, like, that urgency, where others, you just know, it's almost like, and that's why I do what I do. My mission is to tell my story so you don't have to wait for your loved ones to die to start living your life. But sometimes I remember a good friend of mine, a mentor, told me, she's like, Kerry, you can't rob someone of their bottom. And it's a hard quote because I think sometimes in life that's what it takes us, like getting the rug pulled up from under us to get us to wake up and to shake up. And for me, it was the death of my father.
Right.
Yeah.
So when he died, so on December 6th, you go to the ski trip. That was the day that things clicked. So was that the beginning of not needing the depression medication?
Yeah, so that was the beginning of that. I went on, I didn't just like not take him the next day. I definitely did it responsibly. And with my husband, with what he does, there was a lot of fear from my family because, when you off meds, like, and I used to do that all the time. Like, I'm fine. I don't need them, da, da, da. So I did a ton of research, and I knew, and then I found people that were, could help me, because what I was doing before wasn't working. I was changing things. And so I knew that if I was going to take something away, I needed to add something else. So, and that's where the components of, learning about my spiritual life, exercise, nutrition, all of that I needed, and mindfulness, stress techniques. And then the method that I developed was really, really crucial. And so it was probably, a few months until like it was med-free, but then I started this whole journey of wellness study. And then after he passed away, I said, I got to tell my story. People need to know this. Like, people need to know that they can do this and that there's other ways, or there's other support systems, or there's different ways to talk about it. There's such stigma. And like, it was so hard for me because so many people, struggle in silence, and I can see it, or they come to me and they tell me, and I'm like, oh, just imagine if you just started talking or having these conversations, while you're doing this summit. Even with my father's death, it was so hard because I was like, why don't people talk about this? There's so many decisions we had to make that I'm like, I wish we would have known what we wanted, And
like you said, he was so obviously skilled at doing this last chapter right.
Yeah.
He got it and he embraced it. And wow. Let me move on. I'm so excited about this interview, and I want to be sure we hit all these points. So you said that loss can be an opportunity to truly see who you truly are. What do you mean by that, and how can it help people find life and purpose?
In the I'm giving you viewers that it's like simply grieving ebook, and in one of them it talks about like look inside the cracks. And I often talk about when you lose somebody, your world just gets cracked wide open. Like nothing will ever be the same again. And I just look at the year, in the 8 months time from the day that the year that my dad got diagnosed, I lost a grandma, his mom. He got diagnosed. My grandpa, his dad. So I lost my grandma, grandpa. Dad gets diagnosed. I lost the baby, and had a third knee surgery, and then my dad passed away. So like in that year-long time, there was a lot of loss, and so to go on this like journey of transformation and holistic health and happiness during this time was, I remember people going like, we're like bracing, like, oh my God, when's she gonna crash? When's she gonna fall apart?
Right.
But I had that as fuel. And, when your world gets cracked wide open like that, for everyone, my father was like this, like untouchable. So it was such a shock to the community. I mean, we had like thousands at the wake, in patients, and people were like, he saved people from this cancer. And so it was so hard for me to really comprehend. And when you are grieving and with loss, so much happens. Like you just stop caring about what people think about you. You focus on what really matters. And so this is, a lot of times right after he died, I actually still have the email, and I wrote an email to my husband and my mom, literally describing what I wanted to do with my life. I said, I want to have I'm going to get certified in coaching. I'm going to be a motivational speaker. I'm going to be on TV. Like literally everything that's happening right now was in this email, and I still have it. And it was about a month. I think it was in May after he passed away. And I remember them thinking I was completely bizarre, like, whoa, what's happening to her? But what I found was I was truly connected with who I was, because everything else didn't matter. It's just like you break down, you peel away. You don't care what people think about you. You realize how short your life is. And then for me, it was, I had spent so much time trying to find health and happiness and all of this. And then I have that urgency now. It's like I always used to say I used to waste my life. I didn't. It all serves purpose up till now, but I'm like, I have things to do now.
Right.
So I just feel like when we go through loss and death, we have to remember that we always have a choice of how we want to go through that. And, we always look at it. And the reason why it's so sad is because we love so much, which is amazing. And then we have to remember that there's authentic sadness and not conditioned, because if we have like regrets, or I should have said this or that, then we know that is learned. That's conditioning. But if we focus on the pain hurts because we love so much, that's what can really fuel us. Mm-hmm. But I just feel like for me, it was really, and a lot of my clients that have gone through that, it's time. It's really, if you want, you can look inside the crack and really see who you really are. Start getting rid of what doesn't serve you anymore, that toxic lifestyle, the drama, the judgment, and then kind of looking at your life and like, what am I doing with my time, and how am I using my gifts? How am I being of service? And how am I feeling, purposeful in my life?
And I think when you love somebody so much and then you lose them, you obviously start to consider your own mortality, but it just puts a little, like you said, a little bit of urgency on, okay, they can't do what they were so good at anymore because now they've died.
Yeah.
That just puts more emphasis on what am I going to do in the time I have left, because I don't know how much time I have left. Yeah, I may get diagnosed tomorrow with pancreatic cancer. What do I do then?
Yeah, exactly. And I always tell people too, like the best thing for me in the beginning, because I didn't have I wasn't fully connected yet with myself, was I would do things in honor of. And so when I was blogging and doing work, and it was like, I'm going to carry on what my dad started. I'm going to carry on this legacy and do things in honor of. And eventually it was like, no. And my dad was a big part of the story in the beginning because I had to tell it. I mean, that was the catalyst. And now it's like, no, all of us can relate to this disconnection in some fashion,
Right.
you know, of who we are, what we're here for, what's our purpose, what's our meaning in life. And so, you know, I don't, that's not the forefront of what Simply Kerry is. You know, even when we came to the, I waited so long to launch the website. And when I launched, it was just a blog site. Like for the whole year that my dad was sick, I was writing for myself, and it was journaling. Okay. And a lot of the blogs and these newsletters I would send out was just reflections. So when I was writing originally, it had nothing to do with anybody else but myself. And then when I'm like, I have to tell my story, how am I doing that? Oh, okay. I have like 100 like journal entries I can start sending out. So it worked really well.
Right.
And I remember I'm like, well, what am I going to call this? And so it was really funny how even the name of the business came. I was actually talking to my dad. I used to talk to him all the time before I go to bed, and he'd show up in dreams. A lot of my business is actually set up because of connecting with him in dreams and just getting those, like, what would dad say?
Yeah.
And Simply Kerry came in that conversation of, I'm like, I'm a marketing person. I'm creative. Why can't I think of what to call this? And I'm like, it should be so simple. And then all of a sudden I felt like I heard him be like, Simply Kerry. Yeah. Because that's really what happened. It was, my transformation and the whole method came on, and like, I simply became who I came here to be in the world. I just returned to what I call inner star. You know, we talk about our inner child, our authentic self. And for me, I resonated with inner star. And so I just started peeling away all the things that I wasn't and started bringing this to the table, you know?
And I love inner star. That's beautiful. I love that. Let me see here. All right. After going through what you did, what do you wish you would have known? And what advice would you have for others dealing with end-of-life care and grief?
I would think, and I said this before, not wait. I wish don't wait for your loved ones to start dying or to die before you start living. But how do you even know that? I get the unfortunate news we got 2 years after this happened. My husband's father, who is a dentist, retired. And from 5 days from when my dad got diagnosed, he got diagnosed with multiple myeloma. So we're kind of reliving that whole thing right now, and it's interesting because my husband, we teach this stuff, we guide people all the time, and you have to allow people to go through that. And I remember when my dad passed away, a good friend of mine called me who had lost his parents, and he said, if I can tell you anything, he's like, everybody's going to go through this differently. And you got to respect and honor that. And that was probably one of the best nuggets of advice for me, because everyone in my family handled this so different. And you don't know, because I'm someone who wants to talk about, I wanted to talk about them all the time. I wanted to do things. I was the one, like at every family, like anniversary or party or event, we would like do balloon releases. We would, we do things in honor of him. We had like a tournament making party, and we wrote stuff about dad, and the kids loved that stuff. But my siblings and my mom weren't ready for that. And so then I interpreted it as, what's going on, and took it kind of personally. But when I got that message, like, we've got to go through this differently. Mm-hmm. So that was really important, is just knowing that everybody's going to go through it differently. Also, I wish I would have known. I wish the conversations would have started earlier. I came from a family that didn't talk about things. So when we had to make decisions about, what he wanted, I think my mom knew some of that. They had those conversations, but it wasn't really shared with the kids. She's a little bit more quieter. And so that was hard. And then like just picking like out stuff for the funeral, and like headstone, and like being prepared for like costs, and it's just, so I just think some of those decisions would have been a lot smoother had we not have to think about, well, because he had before he passed away, we got to go on another family trip to Mexico, and when we were there for a whole week. We went scuba diving together. He's on like all of these pain meds, and the cancer at this time had spread everywhere, so we knew our time was limited. And on the day that we were before we're leaving, he said to my mom, he's like, I gotta get home. And we get home, and the next morning he had a stroke. And then which it kind of, now looking back at it, it was almost a blessing in disguise, because my dad wasn't one that's to say I love you. His love language was, experiences. Yeah. And so like, growing up, you always wonder, like, does he love me? Because he didn't say it, but he showed it. And I don't think, had he been able to speak to us that last week of I think that was like almost like God's way of being like, I'm just going to remove this pressure from you. So that was really hard though, because he couldn't communicate with us to tell us things, but he was able to tell us things in other ways. So I think those decisions, like in the hospital and what do we do, would have been, nice. I think I think that families need to start talking about these things. Yeah.
And I have to say, so this is what you get for assuming. When I was hearing you talk about how he embraced making the most out of the time he had left, I just sort of assumed he was probably going to be really good about talking about what he wanted should he get to the point where he couldn't communicate any longer. And what you're saying is he wasn't good at that.
Nothing. No. And so when we would, and it was like, he was very good at letting us know, like, when you get chemo, and every now and then he said, I remember him saying to me once, he said, Kerry, there may be a time, I'm going to get emotional. There may be a time that I'm going to stop taking the medicine, and you're going to have to be okay with that, and they treat it in our family order. I'm the baby in the family, and then everyone else understood some of the medical. So that's another thing. So like everyone, you have to really respect and identify the roles that you play in the family unit. My sister was his partner and physician, and so he's going to go to her and my brother, who's the nurse, to talk about medical stuff. Right. He's not going to come to me. I'm not going to understand that. So did
he have those conversations with your siblings, or?
Yeah. And at first I would kind of take it, I'm like, nobody's telling me anything. I don't know anything. But what was interesting when I looked at it, and my husband and I talked about it, he's like, you don't get it. He's like, don't you see the role that you play? I was like the fun adventure one, and I had my own business, so I could go over there. So I got to be with him in a totally different way. Right. So it helped me see like all the different roles that all the family members play for their own gifts. Right. So that was really interesting to recognize and kind of go through that and appreciate that. Because I think a lot of times with families, they're like, well, nobody's helping, or I'm stuck helping mom and dad, or, especially if it's the one sibling that is in town living with them, and they feel that pressure. And so I think for people to kind of look at, okay, what do I bring to the table that can kind of take things, the pressure off, or having those conversations. But he didn't talk about it a lot, so that was hard. And I remember having some conversations. I did ask him one day. I just asked him, like, Dad, are you scared? And he said, yeah. And he got a little emotional. So that was hard, like to think your father of being scared,
Right. A huge important lesson for everybody listening. The summit is all about taking the fear out of having conversations. Yeah. And a lot of the experts are experts about advanced care planning. So you're sitting here as a perfect example of, it sounds like there was a little bit of wringing of hands of, I don't know if he would have wanted this, that, or the other thing. And that's a huge lesson to take away. Kerry is saying one of the things she wished she had known was, did he want this, that, or the other, and when to stop? And so just underscore that lesson. That is a huge lesson.
And you bring up a good point, because I talk about this. I was, now I have, it's opened up the discussion for Brad and I about some things, and there's some things that I would want with my end of life that he's not comfortable with. And you have to, and this is hard for people, really, really hard. And you have to learn to see, and I do this in my transformation work, is that the key is to become an expert in yourself. Mm-hmm. What are your wishes and what do you want in the life? And then when you go to the experts or the, in that field, you have to feel, and this is why being really in tune with your body and mind and spirit is really important, because if they tell you something and it doesn't feel right, then that's not the answer, So that's because you're going to, and especially this is the one thing I thought was really kind of difficult was some of the yuckiness that happens in death, because there is a sales component of it, and people are selling caskets and selling memorial items. I mean, that kind of stuff is, I was very protective of my mom when she was kind of going through that. I'm like, Mom, you don't need to buy this right now. Like, take some time. I think we waited a whole, almost 10 months before we got him a headstone, because I'm like, this is a big deal.
Right. Well, and just one more point about the advanced care planning. It's all about the conversation.
Yes.
It's all about letting everybody know, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, because they're going to be, if you got 3 siblings, there are going to be 3 different opinions about what Daddy would have wanted, what he wouldn't have wanted. But all that stops and all that gets resolved when everybody hears what Dad says.
Exactly.
And then there's no confusion, there's no wringing of hands, there's no guessing. And the best time to do that is long before the diagnosis.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
So, I'd love to move on to this. I'm very interested to hear you talk about this. You've done a lot of work educating people on grief outbursts and emotional triggers. Tell us more about that.
This is something I wish I would have known about before. I was the queen of these random grief, I call them grief outbursts, where it was coming out of nowhere. You just get so angry. And for me, my symptoms looked like this. So we have a family cottage lake house. And so I'll just give you the first time that we were going up there as a family it was the weekend, 4th of July weekend, my dad's birthday falls on that. I would say probably the week prior to us getting ready to leave, I was cleaning.
Before or after his death?
After he passed away. So the whole family would be together up at the cottage, where we spent 30 years going together. It was one of his favorite holidays. So I spent the week probably, cleaning everything in the house. I had all these symptoms of OCD and control, and this needs to be done. And I was irritable. I was lashing out on my husband. And then all of a sudden, the day that we were packing and leaving, I just lost it. Just fell on the ground and I'm just bawling. And because he's like, why are you so mad? What is wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't know. And then I just lost it. And then I'm like, I miss him. And it just was this, big outpour. That was the first one. That was intense. And then we saw them happening anytime we were going to do a family anniversary, when you are going to do something that you used to do with them, the tradition isn't going to be the same. You have all these expectations, all this stuff happens. So that was really important to really go in. And as doing what we do now, Brad and I we're very transparent, as you can tell. I'm an open book. So anytime I face something or go through a struggle, we're like, okay, what's happening here? We go into it and then we find a solution. So, we would start, Brad started tracking, holidays and events. And I didn't even know this last time we had another family event, and I was just out of character. And he's like, are you going to just cry already? I'm like, about what? And he's like, Kerry, he's like, your dad's birthday is coming up. And I'm like, oh. So I think subconsciously we have to remember that, all of these things are stored in our brain. Our hippocampus is the part of the brain that stores all these emotional memories. So all these things that, family events and songs, there's times when people will say something in a conversation and all of a sudden I'm emotional. Where'd that come from, Right. So instead of, for me, it's very important to go into it. And I'm very open. I'm like, sorry, you just reminded me of my dad, and I have a little moment and then I'm fine. And I find just like you were talking about having those difficult conversations, I think it's more energy and more time thinking about the difficult conversation, where if we just did it, it's like, okay, now I feel better.
Yeah. One of the experts in this series, he's a yoga instructor, but his focus is it's actually grief yoga.
Oh, cool.
And it is about, he says, if you just keep pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down, it doesn't go away. It just gets stacked, nice, hard, and packed. And the only way that is going to get unpacked is to feel it and to let it happen. And you want to cry, cry.
Yeah.
Crying is very healing. It's okay to feel whatever it is you're feeling on that particular day or at that particular moment in time.
Yeah. And we have to remember that feelings are meant to be felt. You know, when we were babies, we cried because there was a need. And I think, you know, in our society, we just like, don't talk about it. You're okay. Even like with kids, you know, we say, you're fine, you're fine. No, they're crying. They're hurt. They're telling you that there's something wrong with them.
They're crying if they were fine.
Yeah. And so, same thing with adults, that we have to recognize any emotion that we feel, especially if it's an out of character one, whether it's, fear, sadness, anger, frustration, especially those that we learn, we have to stop and go, okay, what is this really about? What do I need right now? And release it and go into it. You know, I always say, don't go over it or go into it. You know, I use it as the analogy, you know, when you're on in the fitness industry where you use a foam roller.
Right.
So if you have pain in your muscle, the muscles tighten up. So you apply pressure with the foam roller, and then when you first do it, it hurts so bad. You're like, ugh. And I usually am swearing. And, and then you stop and you just apply the pressure, and it hurts, and then all of a sudden the pain starts to dissipate and release. And it's the same thing with our emotions too.
Right. Absolutely. And so couple other things. I want to be respectful of your time, but this is so amazing. So how can people change their views about death and loss so it isn't so scary and hard?
You know, for me, I think one of the biggest things that helped me was some books came into my life at like the perfect time. And that was interesting. Like one of them being like Heaven is for Real. And I got the kids version of that one, and it was right before my dad passed away, and I read it to my kids. The Shack, there's books that just people gave to me, came in, and it prompted me to, after one, it was like to keep reading and start to change my view about, or just not even change, it was explore. Because I think in our society, it's like death is so bad and it's so wrong and it's so hard. We are all going to die. We can't forget that. It's, we come into this world and we're going to leave this world. And, I love that one quote about like the dash, on the epitaph of the date you're born. What matters is in between that dash of when you're born and when you go. And so what are we doing with that dash? And for me, I think it was very hard for me because loss or death was so looked upon so scary because nobody talked about it. And then I really had to do what I call a spiritual surrender. I think, a lot of people we're so disconnected from our spiritual side. And I had to really kind of heal that as well, but just starting to talk about it and explore it and having these conversations, I think are really, really important because even in my family for that first year, we didn't really talk about it. And after I was reading these books, the Heaven for Real book was really cool because from a child perspective, they're not scared of it. We teach them. Mm-hmm. And when I read this book to my kids, they were this sounds crazy, but they were really excited for Bampa. They call him Bampa. And I'm like, I remember reading it, and in the book, you can be, and you can look younger. And my son says, "Mom, like, do you think our Bampa's gonna pick his gymnastics body when he gets to heaven?" He was a gymnast, and in his day, that's why he got into college. Uh-huh. And we have this great picture of him doing the iron cross. And I'm like, you know what? He probably will. And then when we lost the baby, he says, "This is great because Bampa's going to be with our baby."
Ah, that's lovely.
So I remember just sitting there after reading this, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, so I think if we following our children a little bit more. When I started reading a lot before, like what to say to kids and what not to say to kids, I actually was a ghostwriter for a grief blog for a while prior to my dad passing away. So I felt like I did a little grief therapy before I even lost him.
Sure.
Some good things about like things and what to say and not to say to kids, and don't tell them they're sleeping, because then they're going to go to be afraid to go to bed. And I mean, even when we went to the wake, Elliot, my son, I have this picture of him. I can't believe I took a picture of it, but it was so crazy. He ran into the church and he like sprinted up to the casket to go see my dad, and he was touching him. And then he just sat with him, and this picture is really peaceful of him just sitting in with my dad in the casket. And I'm like, oh, and everyone was like gasping. And I'm like, just leave him, he's fine. And so I go up to him later, and he's like, Mom, look. And he's like, feel how hard his chest is. And he's like, I bet you he picked his gymnastics body. He's like, he's not even here. And I'm like, no, he's not. And it was so amazing.
That's
yeah.
So then, now that I know that he was a gymnast, must be why he had such a cute butt in the scrubs, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. But speaking of kids and what to say and grief and all that kind of thing, I do want the viewers to know art therapy is an awesome outlet for young ones, especially if they're not able to verbalize how they're feeling particularly. I highly recommend art therapy in your area because it's just can do wonders.
That is so true. We did a ton of and I don't think I've done it with, not in terms of grief, but other things with my kids when they can't explain what's happening, and I have them draw pictures, and we've done some really neat things with that.
Yeah.
And, after he passed away, we did a lot of projects. Like we traced his hand, and then they have their hand and it's framed.
Oh, nice.
And then we did, like using some of his clothing items and making items like tangible. I think having tangible items is really, really important.
Yeah.
Little keepsake items. But we did a lot of types of creative work for, like, I remember we built those when we went to Mexico to, like, as an anniversary trip after he passed away. Our whole family went, and we made these little wooden boats and wrote messages on, and we sent them out to sea.
Oh, that's
so nice. Yeah.
So nice. That's so nice. Okay, so I do have one more question, and then I want you to just share whatever kind of wrap up things you would like to share. So tips for communicating with kids and helping them through loss. All right, actually, you really almost just hit on that.
Yep.
What I do want you to do, there was a little bit of a spoiler alert earlier, and so now what I want you to do is explain your free gift that you're offering these viewers, which is very exciting.
Yep, it's an ebook. It was 10 steps that, after I launched my story, I had a lot of kind of questions like that prompted interviews like this. We did some grief workshops, and I called one Joyful Grieving, and it was really, really neat. You definitely have to be ready for that type of work, because I think a lot of times sometimes you not everybody, like, I can be a lot for people, like, I don't want, and there's some emotional healing that needs to be done. And however, I wanted to put something together that I could at least help them in that time. And so I wrote down, like, what are 10 things? I don't know why 10, that's easy steps.
A good number. Yeah,
good number of how to find life after loss, and what are the 10 things that I did that I could recommend to others. So there's an ebook with some pictures and then at the end of it, there's a poem that I wrote that actually got a lot of attention, and I have a reminder now on my calendar to share it on social media, like during Christmas and holidays. And it was, we're talking about the grief outburst, and the title of it is To Those Who Are Not Grieving. And the poem is basically my experience of when I'm going through those grief outbursts and explaining my behavior, like when I isolate or when I don't talk about it, or because I think so often people that are supporting those that are grieving, they don't know what to do.
Right.
I don't know what to say. I don't know is she mad at me? What do I talk about? So this poem kind of, and a lot of people were like, this is awesome. I think this is what my spouse is going through. And so that's at the end of the ebook that I know people have saved and kind of read when they're going through those tough times.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. That's a fabulous gift. So thank you for that. So to wrap up, so Kerry's website is simplykerry.com. Tying this up with a bow, what lasting advice or suggestions or encouraging words, or what would you like to leave the viewers before we end this?
I think the biggest thing is, no matter like whoever's listening to this, like looking at like what are you here for, and what the message that I would I think is to remember that there's always a choice, and you get to choose how you want to go through not only this process but just life in general. And we always focus on feeling, like I want to feel better, I want to feel joyful, I want to feel happy, and in order to feel better, we need two things. You need thoughts and actions, and your thoughts and actions need to be in alignment. If they're not, that feeling is not going to come. And for example, if you want to feel happy and you're going on a run outside, but you're thinking about how much you hate your spouse and you hate your job, you're not going to feel better. So going through this process is just remember, when you're feeling things, to go into those feelings and realize they're there for a reason. You have an emotional need, you have to tend to that. It's usually your inner star telling you, like, help me, guide me, give me comfort, give me guidance, give me love. And it has to come from the self first. So I think that's, the most important message I want to just stress is, like, take back the power and remember that you have, at any point, even through the hardest times in life, we have a different way that we could go through it. How can we go through it smoothly? How can I connect with people or reach out for help? So I can, so it doesn't have to be such a awful, painful experience.
Right. Your website is fabulous. I really encourage people to go to it. There's that wonderful video on the homepage that tells a little bit of your story. Yeah. And so many people struggle with depression just in general. Yeah. And then you lay on a loss, it can really get difficult. And so I just want to thank you for the work that you and your husband are doing, and how many thousands of people that you've helped. And because of your story and your experience and just your vulnerability, sharing, and like you said, you're an open book. That takes some vulnerability to be willing to be such an open book. So it's really a gift to everybody. And I really, really thank you so much for telling your story and taking it forward. And what did you say? Your inner star?
Inner star, yes.
Letting that inner star and letting it shine, because you're doing wonderful work.
Thank you so much.
Oh, this has been an honor. Thank you, Miss Kerry.
So much, Tina.
All righty.